Okay, well, just want to say thank you all for being here. I'm very honored to be on the board and work with all these amazing pros. Got to get my glasses on for this. And today I've been excited to meet Trillium. We've been talking for the last couple weeks and learning more about what she does. Read a little bit about her bio. She's the director of instruction at Woodmont Country Club outside of Washington, D.C., where she's been teaching for the last 11 years. Before that, she taught at the Chevy Chase Club. Did you ever meet him? Chevy Chase? Sleepy Hollow Country Club, which I talked to Junko about, and the scary things that happened there in New York, and Quail Valley Golf Club in Vero Beach, Florida. In the early days of her 20 years of teaching, she started at Jim McLean Golf School in Miami, Jim's flagship school, where she spent a lot of time. Here's my Heidi. Not working? Okay.
Try that.
Is it
Maybe
gonna
stand in the middle.
Okay. Let's see, where was I? She spent a lot of time with many top 100 teachers, including Dr. Rob Neal, a biomechanist. Her training there led her down a deep road of studying what the best players in the world do while working with a wide range of abilities. She's been recognized as a top teacher for years, first as a best young teacher from Golf Digest, and currently sitting on their top 50 in America at number 36. A Golf Magazine top 100 teacher, LPGA top 50 teacher, and U.S. Kids Master teacher. We discussed some questions that I'm going to ask and discuss, but kind of free conversation, see what happens. And then I'm excited to have you watch a lesson and have her share and show her expertise with a special student, my daughter Casey, who has just officially become a PGA associate. Thank you. I don't know how to read. Yeah. Do you want me to go ahead and start asking the questions?
Should we, do you want to get these working before we start? Keep going. Nikki's going, let's go. All right. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for everybody for being here. It's this section is famous in the PGA of America. The Southern California Teaching Summit in particular is famous. So when I got the call from Sean, that was a big honor. I thought, wow, this is going to be a good stage. And so I know a lot of your names, but I haven't met a lot of you. So it's really a nice thing to come from Washington D.C. and come all the way here. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. In our conversations, it's been great to learn. I've been teaching for many years, but we always can learn. So we were talking a little bit about your program. What do you feel like makes your approach and your teaching different, having earned all the distinctions that you have?
Thanks. Well, I'll start back with why I'm here on stage and who I am. I think I was next to someone this morning and I said, "What time does Gabe start?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know anyone here." I'm like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Well, that's me." I'm Trillium. I get it. So I started as a teacher. I started in the business. Actually, I played golf as my first sport, and there was no golf team in high school, so I played lacrosse. I loved it. I played lacrosse in college, and I played golf as my second sport. I thought I was going to be a movie producer. I was a media studies major. I was on that track, and then I'd always played golf. I also played ice hockey, which is how I broke my ankle 4 months ago, and I fell into golf after about 2 or 3 years after college, and I got my start by loving the experience of taking a lesson and feeling like that was magic. That I could hit a ball, someone could say, "Do this," I would do that, and the ball flight would improve. And I loved that. And I never had a female teacher. I never had someone, actually my dad was my teacher and he was great, but he wasn't a teacher. He was just an enthusiast. So I caught on to the idea of golf, but I didn't know I was going to be a teacher until I got into it. And I did start at the bag drop. That was one of my first jobs. So I have picked the range. I have taken clubs out of the trunk. I have cleaned them. I was an assistant. I worked tournaments. I worked outings. I can safely say I did everything. And I was probably about 25 at the time. I realized, you know what, I've been doing it for a few years. I really wanted to learn how to teach. So my colleague at the time said, you should go down to Jim McLean. Jim McLean is a great teacher of teachers. So that got me really kick-started into the craft of teaching and the concept of working with groups and the concept of working with amateurs via what are the best players in the world doing. So we did a tremendous amount of observing what tour players were doing with video, and this was in 2006. So this like launch monitor technology was kind of there, but not really there. Jim subsequently bought like 10 TrackMan gears. Now he's using Foresight. He outfitted his whole new place with Foresight. So anyway, there's lots of great technology now, but there wasn't really at the time. So we're mostly using video, and we're looking at what players were doing consistently across the board. So if you know, and this is at Doral, so we had 10 assistants, which got paid very little, including me. But we would all go on our day off and still watch because it was so enriching. And then lots of instructors. We had about 30 people that knew how to film. The World Golf Championships would come down to Doral. Everybody who was filming would come back with 100 swing clips. You'd have everybody from the field, and you could see what everybody was doing that year down the line with driver, and we all had a very systematic observation strategy. So Jim McLean at the time was very much on target line. I kind of like hand line just to kind of see club playing, but target line's very good if you're on the golf course and you're working with the player because you know flag, ball, camera. It's very easy to do that. If you're on the hand line, which as much as I think that does make sense, sometimes it's a little harder to control that if you're asking everybody in a group to find that exact line. Anyway, so if let's say half of the tour has the flat wrist and a leading edge that's open to it, and half has a flat wrist and then a leading edge that's closed to it, Jim would say, well, it's a preference, doesn't really matter. But if, say, everybody was doing something, then it mattered. So we came out with that golf school with things like that were very practical takeaways, and his 8-step swing book has like all the fundamentals in there, which are kind of really cool to check out. But anyway, so that was my upbringing. Dr. Rob Neal was there who was with biomechanics, and I learned a tremendous amount from him on kinematic sequencing and measuring forces, measuring torques, and measuring where the body is at what point, and what, again, the best players in the world are doing and how they're doing it. So that was a tremendous time for me. And I think a lot of you are familiar, and you have similar stories that are parallel to that on how to teach. But then about 10 years into it, I was teaching a lot of people from the whole spectrum, from beginners to people that were working to mini tour high school, working to play on D1 teams and D1 team players. I had some questions for myself about, okay, I feel pretty confident in my diagnoses on this, but after someone leaves me, what are they going to go do? What do I tell them to do in the week or the 2 weeks? And does this apply when they're on the golf course? In other words, I had been so focused on what should happen, but I hadn't really spent as much time on how to make that happen, how to be effective, and how to see somebody take my information or the information that we kind of worked on together and then actually plug that in under pressure on the golf course in the environment. So that's when I did a slight, not necessarily a detour, but I just pivoted into motor learning and research on how people learn to change habits, break habits, and control skill, muscle memory, basically. And I kind of went overboard on this. I went back to grad school and I took a few years off and just dug into the scientific research on it, and there is a tremendous amount of research, come to find out. Starting in 1930, for example, there's this seminal study. During the war, they had Morse code operators, mostly women. And the question was, okay, we need to get these women up and running quickly. We need to onboard them. What's the best way to do that? Do we give them do we give them a task in A, B, 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 C, 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 C? Or do we say A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D? That'd be a serial, blocked serial. Or random. Random would be the lazy brown fox jumped over the cat. Lazy cat jumped over the brown fox. Or do we give them completely new sentences from scratch? So think about that for a second, how that relates to golf. It's very similar to golf. Do we take the 7-iron and hit 100 shots to the same? Or do we take all kinds of different clubs and try them different places? It's not an obvious answer, because in practice, and this is what happened, this was the result of the study, they just controlled the groups and they gave group A blocked, group B serial, and group C random. These two groups did great in practice, great in practice. This group did crummy in practice, as you can imagine. But when it came to a retention, a transfer and retention test, meaning you wait 2 weeks and you ask them to do it, these two groups looked like they had no practice, and this group was way up here. And that was shocking to a lot of people at the time, 1930. And so that study has been recreated hundreds and hundreds of times. So there's now a really robust pile of research on how we train people to learn new things, and including the Army. And the Army will take, they hired the National Academy of Sciences to do a tremendous amount of research just to vet certain things that have been floating around. Oh, we could do this, we could do that. Well, let's see if this really works. And one of them was something like training privates to learn how to use rifles so that we don't overtrain, we don't have any time to waste. They've got to do all these other tasks. Let's teach them how to shoot. But we need to teach them how to shoot well enough that they can do it under pressure, because they're probably going to be in some pressure situations in a couple months. That's sort of a real reason to do the research. So I felt a little bit like, okay, I'm here for golf, but it's the same principle. It's the same principle. Did I lose you, Heidi? You were asking me questions. Sorry, that was a long answer. Yeah. So that's a bit about where I am now. I'm the director of instruction at a golf club. I've been there for 11 years. Bryce Bussey and I were colleagues for a bit. Nice to see you, Bryce. And we have 2 golf courses. We've got just a tremendous amount of activity. I call it a 5-ring circus, because there's always something going on that's just ridiculous, including like golf carts falling over and stuff. But we've got a 9-hole short course. We've got a space. If anybody's on the East Coast and you're near DC, ping me. You'll want to come, bring your wedges, and we'll play the loop. It's really awesome. But so generally, I work with normal people, aside from a couple of really famous people, but Washington type famous, not the fun Southern California type famous. But for the most part, normal people who don't have a lot of time in their lives. They have jobs. They're usually very smart, but average athletes, So I'd say efficiency is a word that comes to my mind almost every single day. How can I get someone better, faster, efficiently?
That's great. That's somewhat some of the things I had written down, and we were discussing about how your background in motor learning has shaped your instruction. And maybe you can share some examples. How would you use that expertise in a regular lesson? Like, what kind of skills or discussion would you have with a regular client with your expertise in motor learning? How would a regular player understand that?
Sure. So I usually don't bring up the word skill acquisition, or I don't get into the thick of things unless somebody wants to know. But it has shaped the way I've taught in a couple of ways. I say number one would be, I never underestimate how long or how hard it is to make a change. So Parker hit on it perfectly when he said it really depends on how much mileage somebody's put on a particular move. So if someone's been playing for 2 weeks and they're learning, they're still very malleable. I'm more apt to make more hard wholesale changes with somebody, especially if I know that they want to be better in the future and they want a high ceiling of potential. If somebody's been playing for 25 years and they have like a 20-yard slice, but they know exactly where the ball's going, Is that really going to be the one thing that I change to make him play better? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe there's some other things that I can do that's lower hanging fruit, that's a lot easier. So first and foremost, I'm going to respect the person in front of me and really try to find out what patterns are causing problems, what patterns aren't, and is there something that I can do that's going to make a big difference right away? And I'm sure that anyone who's taught a lot in this venue right here is nodding their head like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's right. I think number 2 would be, I'm always thinking in spectrums or progressions. So if you spend time in a gym or if you're recovering from any injury, hopefully no one breaks their ankle like I did. Progression, you start small and you work up. Or in the scientific world, you call it a taxonomy, simple to complex. So if we want to be here ultimately, and you're looking to make a driver swing and it's fast and big, and I've Casey, later you're going to hit your driver, I'm probably going to break the motion down into a bit so she can feel. Is there a spot in the swing that's causing an issue? And what is that issue? Can we break it down until you can feel it? Right? And then we can build it back up. But I'm certainly not going to give somebody too much so they're overloaded. So I think progressions are very good, and we'll talk about it a little bit when we get into some prescription stuff. What are people supposed to do when they go away and go practice? Small tasks that are simple are far better, that they practice often. They're more apt to practice them, and they're more apt to do it even in their house. You tell someone they have to go to the practice range and they've got 2.5 hours worth of work and your list is 9 deep of different things they've got to do, it's probably overwhelming. I'll get to it. Okay, I need to. I know I have to. I want to. But it's a lot. I don't really feel ready today. I think I got to go to the grocery store, blah, 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 blah. But if you say, all right, all we're really doing is getting you to feel your shoulder down at the ball at the backswing, and then I want you to tune into where your pelvis feels. Well, you can do that when you're brushing your teeth. Right? So you get someone motivated, you get their engine going, you get their confidence up, and then they're more up, then you can build on that. The more you're doing one thing, the more you can kind of build on it. The third thing would be intention. And I'll kind of extrapolate that later. But intention, and if you just put that word in your mind, intention is good for us as instructors. What is the one thing I want this person to think? If I've just given them a whole paragraph of stuff, like the full analysis of what I think that issue is, okay, but with it, okay, I get it. Like maybe I get it on the player, but now I've got a paragraph in my mind. What is exactly you want me to do? Let's make that really crystal clear. There's an example I have of in gymnastics. There was a great gymnastics coach I was talking to how she does her training, and she works with a lot of springboard athletes that end up in very good D1 teams and even Olympic teams. She uses a dog clicker. So the dog clicker is this little thing that just goes click, and it's meant for dog training. And she said that when the girls are doing tumbling moves, so they're in the air, it can be very dangerous. She was finding herself saying, "Okay, good," or "Yes," or "There we go," and that was too bland of a word, because it didn't really explain what was good. What was good about that? Okay, I know I landed it, but what did I do correctly? What did I not do correctly? So she said, well, the reason I do this is because it makes me more clear on what I'm asking the athlete to do. And then I communicate, I'm going to click if you say, keep your knees together in that back tuck. That's brilliant. And then the other thing is, like, when you have 15, 16-year-old girls and you're telling one she did a great job and the other she did a good job. Like the women, like, we kind of know, we're like, oh, why wasn't I great? She said, she was good, but I'm okay. Anyway. But the click is just so neutral on favoritism. I don't know that applies to golf as much, but I think the specificity of what your intention is was genius, and I picked that up too from her, and I also picked that up from research too. So there's a whole mountain of stuff on feedback, but that would be feedback. Give someone very accurate, concise feedback, but that means they have to be intentional about what they're trying to do too. So then if I am trying to, let's say, finish on my front foot, and I don't finish on my front foot, but that was my intention, I know I didn't do it. If I have 2 or 3 or 5 things I'm trying to do, how can I know if I really adhered to my intention? I've got too many things. You chase 2 rabbits, you're going to catch none. Just a couple of things.
Okay, great. You had mentioned sort of the difference between blocked type of practice, random practice. Where do you stand on that? What's your opinion? And any conflicting opinions on that? Where do you stand? How do you explain that?
So this is a little bit like angle of attack and the wedges. Yeah, I got some laughs. If you're on Instagram and you're paying it all attention to what's happening, there's this very strong undercurrent of approach to how wedges should be hit. And we had a little bit of flavor with that in the last 2 days. It was really, really fun to see everybody here and hear what they had to say. So back to the blocked random, when I was referring to the typing study, blocked being let's hit the same shot over and over, and random, let's not. There's also a conversation that's been going around in the industry, in the golf industry, about that. And it's usually block versus random. So without getting too much into the thick of it, but I can get into the thick of it later if you want, the kind of the thick of why it's sort of a hot topic. The research really says random is better. But practically, and I'm ultra practical, and 60% DNA from Germany, very, if we ask someone to hit the same shot over and over and over, it may not be as effective because they don't have to forget it and then remember it. And I know when you forget something and then you remember it, it helps make it stick. So there are times I might have a lesson and I might get their brain off of something if they're getting too much of a lather, just to get away, and then see if you can do it again, see if you can remember it. Of course, golf is like that. We don't have a whole pile. We don't have 70 balls in front of us. Now, the golf swing is so complex. From a motor learning standpoint, the golf swing is as complex as it could possibly be. There's and we know, we watched Andy Plummer. We have like 55 alignment rods. But what I'm saying is, no matter however you want to teach, if you still work within this framework of working with someone, it doesn't even matter what your philosophy is, angle of attack, steep or shallow or not, or 30 degrees or not, 100 alignment rods. If someone's clear on what their intention is, and they can give themselves feedback as to whether they did it, they're going to be okay. If they take bite sizes, they're going to be okay. If they practice more frequently, they're going to be okay. So block practice, I may take a 7-iron myself, and it looks like I'm hitting the same shot or trying to hit the same shot, but I am not. I am checking about 5 different systems, checking how my feet feel. I'm checking how the pressure feels like I'm pushing off the back foot. I may be checking where my pelvis is. I'm checking where the lead wrist is. So it appears to be blocked practice, but it's not. And how many of our players, how many of us can sit there and hit 20 minutes worth of the same ball and have it land within a 10-yard diameter circle? Probably some of us can. Now, if you get to that point, that's a great time to switch it up to random. That is a great time to go on the golf course. It's a great time to change things up. Try some from a downhill lie. Try some from the rough. Try some from a side hill. That's when you want to test yourself. Now, very often than not, I'm not going to get all of my students having all of their shots end up within a 10-yard radius. I'm not. I'm going to get them pretty close. So you know what? We're gonna go out anyway and do some skill building. So I think of the blocked practice, or the practice where you're going to really work on your tech. I just think of that as technical work. So technical work is good. Technical work is necessary. Technical work, we all need technical work. But if we put it into play, if we're trying to transfer our range game to the golf course, I mean, who has ever had a student say, I need to take my range game to the golf course? You probably all have. In that case, we need to do some things that are more like the golf course. That's not so complicated. Okay, so we limit the number of golf balls. Instead of unlimited, narrow it down maybe to 10 or to 5 or to 3. So one of the drills I like to do when I'm practicing, because I tend to just get a little bored, is I'll go in groups of 3, and each 3 balls I'll have one thought. And it may be a movement thought, like what am I trying to do, or it might be an outcome. It might be outcome. If I think an outcome, it means I'm feeling pretty good about my swing probably, and I'm just working on more of the skill part of it as opposed to the technical part of it. And that out of those 3, if I'm feeling good, maybe I'll put 3 down and have a different club. So I'm just segmenting, and I do this with students too, just segmenting what they're doing when they're practicing, so they're thoughtful about it. They're measured, like measured as in I'm paying attention to what the ball's doing, and I'm paying attention to maybe what issues I might be having.
So it sounds like you don't have to choose one or the other type of practice, and that one is the right way and the other is the wrong way. I think it sounds to me, and I do with my own students, a combination, like you're saying.
Yeah, Heidi.
Some repetition on the range, but also even on the range practicing like you're playing. Any other examples of other drills or things that you do that represent one side or the other?
So many.
Okay, I do with Woodmont, it's under snow for the winter, and so we have an off season. Has anybody had off seasons before? Kind of know what that's like. Yeah, you get slow. You either you just slow down what you're doing, or you figure something else out to do in that time. So I look at the off season as an opportunity to work with people on their technical work that they may not have wanted to do during the regular season. So I'm on a golf course probably 60% of the time during our summer season, because I want to see what they do on the golf course, and I can't always see it on the range. Probably more than 60, frankly, because we'll be out there, and that's much more just working with skill. We're working with what they have. I'm not making technical. Of course, I'm watching their swing. I can see what's going on, but whatever patterns that they have are probably going to be good enough that they can play. They can play well enough. It's good enough. Is it a perfect ball flight for some people? I mean, certainly maybe wouldn't be my perfect ball flight, but if it's not in some nefarious lie and they can hit it again, okay, they're gonna have fun. I mean, everyone's different. Some people are trying to play, in a USJ event. That's a little different. Then we're gonna drill down a little bit more. So in the wintertime, I started this thing called the mobility class. And I told a few of you here about this. This was a winter class that was in the yoga studio, kind of made it up. It's like, why don't we do something we can get people flexible and strong, and it'll be a nice foundation for the golf swing. So I found a bunch of golf clubs that are laying in some corner of the bag room, like Tommy Armour blades that no one was gonna hit again. Cut them down, put some molded grips. I made about 15 of them. And then I marketed the class. I said $20, just come in, let's see what happens. So the first winter was mostly that. It was like, let's do some exercise. Here's the golf swing. It was like 20% golf swing. I'd say if you'd be here, okay, now we're gonna work on some thoracic rotation stuff. We're gonna do things that were slightly tangential to golf, but actually based on golf things. Okay, I got a lot of feedback that people loved the golf part. So eventually, fast forward, so now it's about 80% golf swing. It's basically a golf swing class inside, but we don't swing fast. We might have 2 or 3 swings. So what we're doing is working on the feeling of the motion of the golf swing without hitting a ball. But they have the mirror so they can see themselves. So we are locking in what it feels like. Like nothing's off limits with this. We'll start with just neutral spine. We'll start with where's your pelvis at setup. We'll do like from the ground up, from your toes, okay? Can you find your abdominals? Okay, let's start with some rotations here, just getting the feeling of that early takeaway. All these kinds of things that you all know, and you want them to know, but it's really hard to do it when there's a ball right there. And it's really hard to do it when there's a driving range right there. So if you take all that away, you have this wonderful opportunity. And I even put music. I bring like very low key music. And I put yoga mats on the ground, not because we're going to get down and up or anything. I mean, I did that. I made the mistake, and it's just too much. Especially some of the older folks, like the 75-year-old who has bad knees. So I just use it so that they know where their spot is, so that when they do make a backswing, they're not going to nail someone in the head. And it works. It's great. It's great. So I even had a lady who said, Trill, I've never played golf, but can I do your class? I guess. Sure, why not? 2 years later, she's shooting in the 80s. I couldn't believe it. And she credits the class. I think that's probably right, because she learned how to make a swing. Right? And so then this group would come back in, and they'd come back in, and they'd play, and they'd say, well, what about, I'm unclear the transition, because we spent a lot of time in the transition. We spent a lot of time in sequencing. Okay, so we can unpack that a little bit. And because one person asked the question, somebody else asked the question, and then you've got the mirror. So the mirror's right there. So I could say, we're all making follow-throughs. All right, everybody, look at your shoulders. Look at my hair. Look at your eyes. So let's hold that for a sec. So when we're holding stuff, and you've got to engage your muscles, it ends up being a workout. So that's one probably pretty easy thing. All of you could do this. You could just lift this idea and just go do it. And if you don't have a room with mirrors, you could do it in a ballroom that has reflective windows. Just try to get a little of that going. But a lot of ideas out there. Any questions so far? I mean, I'm certainly open to.
If you have one, please raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone.
There's a question.
What are your thoughts on sticking from lesson to lesson? You were talking about like mock practice versus what I've heard as variable practice. So from like session to session to session, if you see a person who has something that you're hoping to change, would you spend several different sessions talking about the same thing, or are you generally compelled to change the idea up from session to session to session?
Thank you, Earl, right? So the question was, how much continuity am I going to keep from session to session with a student?
Yes. Just thinking about like what you spoke about how your brain when it forgets something and then has to refine that idea, like thinking about, do you want to stick with, if you see somebody that's got some issue, do you stick to the same idea? Or are you always, even if it's successful, do you change it? Do you, like, how might you approach a player in that particular case?
Okay, I'm going to need some water for this one. Okay, did everybody hear that? Kind of. Earl, were you the test subject for Parker McLaughlin yesterday? Yes. I spoke with you afterwards. So Parker and I were talking about it, but then you were walking back, and we had a quick catch-up conversation about how do I then take that and do it. That would be an interesting conversation to share too, I think. Okay. So let me use you as an example first, because I think everybody saw you yesterday hitting shots. And so you had a couple of new things that were communicated to you that you were working on. that you realized, all right, maybe I'm producing force with my hands and upper body as opposed to, or hands?
Yes. What I took away from yesterday was how I was using my hands and wrists and the action that I was creating there versus having it come more from my torso or more from my body.
Yep. So Earl's takeaway was I was taking too much into the hands and not enough of my body. Yep. So we call that in the spectrum of learning, that would be early learning. Early learning for anybody, even if you are an accomplished player or if you're a new player, it's the same neurologically for everybody. It starts in the prefrontal cortex. It starts in this executive command center right here, and it's a very expensive in terms of energy place for things to happen in our brain. So it's a part where we would tell ourselves, okay, I need to do something different, and it could come out in words, but it's you're very conscious of that, conscious of what's happening. So right now, you would have to consciously think, okay, I have to do something else other than fling my hands. Okay, how am I going to feel? I've got to feel it. So there's talking in your mind. There are things you're looking for. There's a lot going on. So our brain will send a synapse, just this electrical current from a neuron through our central nervous system, which is in our spinal cord, out to the muscle spindles into the motor neurons, which then creates output. So in the beginning, your brain might be sending, it's like, I know what I need to do, but I don't know how to do it. So the signals may get kind of lost, they get misfired, you see some choppy movements. Someone who's making a movement for the first time, they look like they've got two left feet. That's normal because they're trying to find out what that movement may be, what it might feel like. If the task is particularly difficult, then it could be really, really scary for somebody. So caution on making the task too hard. I'm always erring on making the task easier. Remember the progression or the taxonomy, so that they don't feel too uncomfortable. Because you've also heard people say, well, when I think too much, it messes me up. Okay, well, they're right. That is true. Thinking is very disruptive to motor output, especially something that they've already been doing. If they're trying to learn it for a second, you have to actually do some thinking about this. You have to. That's just part of the learning process. But then once you have a sense of what you're supposed to feel, you're like, okay, I got it. This is where we all come in as coaches and instructors. We can help people find those cues, do a lot of asking, like, what did that feel like? What does this feel like? Why don't we try this? Let's have, who is it that said you need 9 different ways? Was it Parker? Yeah, 9. Yeah, sure, 9 different ways. Say it 9 different ways. Feel like your belly button's going to face the target. Let's feel like your arms staying back. Your arms want to stay at the beach. Your chest is like, nope, we're leaving. Maybe it's a motorboat. Your hands are the skier and the chest is the boat. The boat's going first. You don't want the skier to go first, right? So there's lots of different keys you could have for that. Drill, you have your arm back. All right, let's turn through. The arm's just connected and it's not, this was a Nick Faldo drill from like 1981. That's just one of those golden drills. Right, so you've got some ways to find it. That would be a key for us to give our students, a key piece. I use an app called Coach Now. I know OnForm does a great job. There's lots of apps you can use. So what I will always do is have I've got a tripod always in my bag, and I've got a this is just pretty easy, goes in. I've got a iPad and a phone, and I've got my app loaded up, and I'm just going to videotape someone. I always do the early learning one so I can see comparison, and people like to see comparison. But I'm also going to videotape while I'm watching them, and I might talk into the video to say, and if you don't have the app yet, just use it on your own phone and airdrop it to them, or put it on their phone. But in the last 11 years, I ran numbers on how many students I have had, and it's 1,832 different students. So I'm really happy that I started using this, because I might see somebody that I haven't seen in a year, and I want to go back and say, like, who is this person? I know I've seen them, but what did I say? What did I do? So it's nice for me to have all that historical data, right? But it also gives them a chance to look at the video and say, okay, I get it. I looked at the videos. Okay, look, yeah, the videos made sense. Now they have to look at the video. If they don't look at the video and they don't look, that's on them. But let's suppose they have it, then you can go practice it. Does that help?
Yeah, I like that. Well, for me, that brings up another question that we had talked about, but just your expertise in motor learning. I know it from a sort of surface level. I'd love to hear more about the in-depth description of that type of learning. And it reminds me a lot of my daughter, who's going to hit here soon, because she hits it to the right a lot, and she keeps saying, how do I change that? What does it feel like? And we're talking about club face rotation and swing path, but how would you help her, which you might do in a minute, and how would you explain it to any other student you had? How do I get this club face square? How do you explain it to them? How do they understand it? How do they adapt it and adjust it?
Do you want to start hitting? Sure. Okay. So this is Casey. Casey, I haven't seen you hit yet before. Do you want to tell us a little bit, or you want to tell me about what you've been doing in the last 10 years?
So I obviously grew up with a mom who's a PGA pro, so I played just here and there, her birthday, Father's Day, that kind of thing, and did all her girls' golf programs, but I played soccer, so I did not ever play competitively. It was just always, when mom is having Mother's Day and we have to go play or that type of thing. And then I started working for her, actually doing just graphic design stuff, and then started actually helping with the kids. So I was hitting balls here and there, and then I'd say in the last year is when I actually started wanting to understand my swing, and I developed a habit of, we were actually in girls golf when I was about 10, teasing one of my friends about her swing, and I started doing it from mimicking her, so I ended up hitting it right all the time, because she was super wristy and we were just tease her. So I've been hitting it right basically 15 years now.
Okay.
But I feel like in the last year I'm starting to understand it, and my problem is that I can say it as many times in my head. I know my club face is open, and no matter how many times I tell myself when I'm coming through impact, square the club face, I'm telling myself that every time, and my body's just not clicking.
You're a perfect candidate right now. This is excellent.
So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
She knows the facts of the swing. She understands mechanics and rotation, but can't seem to get herself to do it.
And it's pretty much with my drive, my other clubs, I'm okay at getting it square, but it's the driver. I cannot.
Sometimes things are sticky,
Yeah.
right? Habits are sticky.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we can do. Are you comfortable hitting a driver
Yeah,
right
I
off the
warmed
bat?
up a little bit, so I can
Okay.
just start with the driver.
Cool. So I like to just watch and see and ask a lot of questions before I get into anything. I say just watch, but my brain is calculating 50 things, but I'm probably not going to say any of them until I'm really good and sure I know it's worth saying, because it's really hard to unhear something unless it's a compliment. That was coming from a good place. You know what I'm saying? Okay, Casey, 1 to 10, 10 being that's exactly what you wanted to do. 1, it was just the worst you've ever hit. What was that?
I'd say a 4.
Okay,
or 5.
why?
It was straighter than I normally hit it, so I didn't hate the direction. I felt like my contact wasn't as solid maybe as I wanted it to be. It felt a little bit I just didn't feel like at my contact. I almost felt like maybe I hit near the toe.
Okay, let's do a couple more. Or where are you going, that yellow flag?
I dropped just behind that bunker, I think.
Do you want to use that yellow flag as a green? Yeah. Okay. We can pretend you're on a par 4 and you're going to hit the green with your driver because it's so awesome. Okay, what would you give that one? Same idea.
Okay.
By the way, your backswing is really good.
Thank you. Oh shoot, topped that one.
It's all right. Another one going. Grip pressure tech, 1 to 10, 10 being really, really tight. Where do you think you are?
Sorry, what was the first
Your
half?
grip pressure?
I'm
Tight,
definitely
tight?
tight. I'm yeah, so maybe.
Is it because 250 golf pros are watching, or?
I do it on the course too, and I know I'm clenching a ton in my whole body before I use my driver is really tense.
Have you tried focusing on
Yeah,
grip?
I try to kind of hit the ground a few times and just like let go of the club and
Yeah.
loosen up a little bit.
Does that work?
Sometimes, yeah. Oh, jeez.
It's okay.
No, I'm really tense.
It's okay.
My first 3 were okay. Thanks.
So I think we can all agree, Casey's got a lot of good things going on. Like you don't have any major issues that I would say like, okay, we've got to start all over.
Yeah.
I do think the face being open is like, as you said, is yeah, let's work on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if there's like, when you were talking about the clicker, the dog clicker,
Mm-hmm.
I was saying I'm gonna make her stand there and do the dog clicker for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't feel it when I'm.
Clicker. Okay, we're getting into some other stuff here, aren't we? Who's
That's a pretty common shot.
Yeah, that's how I hit it almost every time. That's it.
Okay, so I can see at the top of her swing is absolutely perfectly square. Her club face is perfect at the top. She's coming down with it way open.
Yeah.
She used to take it back. First move was lay it open.
She's not doing that anymore,
Yeah,
Mom.
so we got that straightened out.
This is like teaching with the parent around.
Sorry.
Well, that's what's hard too. Is she's been my coach my whole life. So.
So, I mean, time out on that. Actually, I've taught a ton of kids. I actually like the parent to be around because you're going to be with her. You're going to be with her, and if you're within an earshot, I mean, there are times where it's the parent's like, I don't really need to be around, but then I kind of want to update them on what the deal is. That's funny. So, your club face is pointing at the flag. Your leading edge is like, look at your wrist.
Yeah.
That's good, girl. Really, really good. So as we start this downswing, nice work with your legs, nice work with your pelvis. Do you see the leading edge? So I'm looking at the club face when it's parallel to her hip and it's at the clouds. So that would be my red flag. I'd say, okay, so to get the club face from, I don't want to break another ankle, I'm worried about. So to get the club face square from here, I mean, it's even here. It's not like she's coming over the top. To get this square, there's about a nanosecond. You would have to do a tremendous amount of work. So I think what we're going to do is make this easier on you and start to feel like your wrist is going into flexion. Feel like you're bowing early on the downswing, so it takes some of the lion's share of the work out of it later on. Okay. Can we try that?
Yeah.
Okay, so before you hit this next one, go to the top of your backswing. Oh, that's a pretty butterfly on your wrist.
Oh, thanks.
It's nice.
there's a butterfly out.
No. Okay, so you're not gonna hit this one. Okay, so you're gonna go to the top. Okay, good. All right, so on the way down, you're gonna start to feel, I'm exaggerating this for her, so I'm gonna exaggerate that. So so like your knuckles are gonna feel like like you're dragging your knuckle dragger.
Okay. Yeah, it's almost like in here too, getting.
Yeah, so I'm experimenting with this. Just say let's really get tuned into the wrists up there.
Okay.
So go ahead and make a few more back swings and start that initial downswing.
So then come down this way more.
You see that?
Yep.
So if you were to look, okay, so this is where I would give her something that she could check in the mirror. So your job, this would be like your one job. When the club is parallel to the ground, so that's like an easy checkpoint, not like, oh, halfway down. Like, what does halfway down mean? Hands or the club or the what? Blah, blah. Okay, when you're at a dining room table, you can't forget that. That's a real easy image. And I put this here. You were like that.
Right.
So we're going to try to get that parallel to your spine.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep. And I can feel that too.
You can feel it? Okay, so let's do a few where you're just gonna go there. You're gonna check it. You're gonna stop and look and check. Okay? Okay, good. Right, ready, Casey? And now we're gonna just whoosh through and you're gonna let the club kind of square itself up. Check.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So I'm not a big grip change person either, unless someone I feel is sort of
It's all mangled in the beginning.
Well, I mean, as sorry, what? That's not on. Anyways, I'll just talk loud. What I said was I'm not a big grip change person either, unless it's sort of out of the norm. So when I see someone who's having a really tough time squaring it, and from my vantage point sitting here, it looks
Weak.
quite weak.
Yeah, weak.
So
Her
and I
left
think what
hand
you're
especially.
doing- I think what you're doing is gonna get it done, but I'm wondering, just would you address that part of it? How
Thanks
you-
for asking that. So really his point is, would you change the grip? Or you could change the grip, it's pretty weak. Yeah, I mean, I do change grips. I don't love to change a grip because I don't want to make someone wholesale feel uncomfortable. But in this case, I might do it. At first, I want to introduce the concept and the idea to see if we can just keep what she has. But if need be, we're just gonna, and I probably will get that guy going a little more, the left.
Does this, but have you ever hit a draw?
Not intentionally, probably. No. Yeah.
That's a good question too.
Control to even like with my driver at least. I don't feel like I have enough control to do like. It's almost like when I get up to the tee box, it's like a gamble every time. What's gonna happen?
Jamie, you just said if you ever hit a draw. That question is so good because I can think of countless times where I've said, what did you used to do when you played well? Like, or what's the lowest handicap you've ever had? I mean, you already told me right away golf wasn't your primary sport and you didn't. Had you said I played in high school and college, I would say, what's your low round? When you were hitting it really well, what was your ball flight? What would that look like? I had a guy once, so I asked him that question. He said he was a scratch, and now he was an 8, and he had been. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and he was all in his head. And he was working with someone who was really, really, really numbers oriented, and he was so focused on chasing numbers that he just got away from the feel. So I asked him just that question: when you were hitting your best, what were you doing? What was the feel? And he's like, oh, I would just feel like and he had the whole answer to it, and it all kind of unraveled, and it's like the lesson just lessened itself because I just watched him get back into that headspace and get back into that thought process, and that was really a really productive thing for him, to give him the clearance and the permission, like emotional permission, to just not be looking at numbers. So, yeah. Okay, you want to try one with the ball?
Sure.
So I want you to hit this one as if it's gonna go halfway, like to the purple. Let's go slow on this.
Okay.
the focus will be on this new feeling with your wrist coming in.
Okay, so just so I have it, I'm coming down.
Yeah, but you're coming straight up.
Yep. Okay.
It's all right.
Go right, so.
Do a few with the tee. Just
Somebody answers that question, you can say, yeah, I did in front of 300 pros.
yeah.
I think I'm not fully, like, conscious.
Go ahead.
I'm not fully conscious, or like, I don't know how to recognize that.
The feel.
Right,
Yeah. I definitely don't think you would have to yet. We'll get there. I'm gonna give you some more teas. I want you to hit the pink one with no ball just to get comfortable.
Just hit the tee.
I thought it was kind of cool it drew at the very end.
But not.
You got a little draw there.
Turning out the very end.
Okay, so just trying to pop the tee, or just.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
In
me give you some
regard,
feels.
I know a lot of people start using like exaggerated movements in order to get a feeling.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that? in terms of
I like it.
creating, like, yeah?
A lot.
'Cause I know there's like arguments with people like, well, you don't want to create bad habits.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
I agree.
The argument is,
Yeah. So what I do is I just articulate really accurately what I'm asking them to do, so that they know where the kind of the bookends are, and it may make sense in their mind, but not. You're really holding on tight. Can you loosen up a
Yeah.
little? Right. So you may even feel like it's like that. So let's say you've got an airplane and the wings are like that. You have to turn the wheel all the way to the left to get it to neutralize. Okay, and then eventually you have to stop turning it to the left. So I'll tell that to students just so that they know, okay, for now, we're gonna crank the wheel. You're gonna feel it's opposite for a while, but I need you to come back in a week. I need you to send me a video. We need to check on this, because as soon as the medicine runs out, you need to stop taking the medicine.
All right, so just hit the tee.
Yeah. That looked really good.
Okay.
But I want you to hit the tee. Yeah, I think the heel's hitting the tee. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
You want to just settle your knees down a little bit, lower your hands. Good girl. By the way, I give you a lot of credit for doing this in front of people. It's scary,
Yeah.
right?
It's the same thing, just slow.
Yeah. Yes. That looked better on the way down, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Could you feel anything different?
I felt like my contact was better. I definitely can feel it in my front wrist, which I think I've been trying to correct it with my right. Just like push to get it square.
Ooh.
So, and I feel like maybe that's why it's just not happening.
Yeah, because you know what can happen there, and I've seen a little bit, the right hand, it can push it out there, and that was the problem when you hit a few squirrely
That's what I
ones.
think, yeah.
Because you
I'm
hit,
trying to push with, like, get my wrist over to
Yeah.
to overcorrect that, but
okay, so are you real right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay, so let's take that right hand and just, like an overcooked noodle, imagine that thing's gonna come in and just, let's do it together. So it's gonna feel like it's not doing much,
Yeah.
right? Even your wrist, just, right? And then, have you ever skipped a stone?
Not successfully, but I have tried.
Okay, well, this will get you there.
Yeah, I think I've never tried to correct, like, leading with my
Mm-hmm.
left wrist to get it over, like that feeling here. I'm always here, and then I'm like, okay, now push your,
Yeah.
your right wrist forward.
I'm not hardcore about it being the left wrist we got to work on or the right wrist. There's certainly, they play a role. So what I'm hearing is that you were focused on that. So let's focus on it, but focus on it as doing something different than pushing, right? So that will be something you can explore and feel. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We have about 9 minutes, is that right, Tom? We're going for 2? Good, 12:45.
Do you want keep hitting?
15.
Oh, okay.
10 to 15. 10 to 15.
So while we were talking about the grip, okay, so this hand, do you see that crease?
Yeah.
So if you open up your hand, it's a little in the palm. I'm gonna scoot that into the fingers.
Okay.
And you just got married, so you have a wedding ring there.
Yes, I do.
Congrats. So you're gonna put it right on that ring.
Okay.
What's his name?
David.
David, right? All right, David. You're gonna get involved now. Okay, do you see what I just did? I pushed your hand over just probably more than you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay, so then scoot it back to somewhere where you're not completely out of
That
sorts.
feels comfortable.
Comfortable-ish? Okay.
Definitely feels
Different?
different, yeah.
You do a couple of rehearsal swings just to get the feel, if you need. Or just go for the ball.
I feel
Yeah.
like almost no control, but it's just maybe because it's new.
It could be new.
Yeah. But
So this is a point where I have full confidence that this is going to work. It may not work right now.
yeah.
I mean, it's probably will work right now at some point, but she's in a learning phase. She's in a new learning phase, and it's scary. So I'm really intentional about not giving her too much that's going to overload, and I found the one thing that I feel like is going to make a big difference. And then it's up to her, right? So if you start seeing those, like a mistake isn't a bad thing from a learning perspective if you know why you did it.
Yeah.
So if you know why you did it, I would then not hit another one, and I would do, like you could even split your grip.
Yeah.
Go ahead and split your grip, no ball. So this is like 2 or 3 inches in between. Do your backswing, and then really feel like your hands are turning over. Tune into your grip pressure. Right, so that would be another thing you could do. You could hit it with the ball if you wanted to, but that's a real hard drill to hit a ball with.
Yeah, I'm feeling because before my grip
Mm-hmm.
was so foamy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I just don't feel like I have quite as much control, but
I'll give you another thought, and this is sort of half for you, but half for the audience too. Like this is another one I found to work really well. I'll put 2 T's and call it a finish line. So set up your driver. So if the toe of your club, so that's this part, the heel of your club are having a race, and this is the finish line. When your ball goes to the right, what do you think wins the race?
the heel.
The heel. So what would that look like? Yeah, it would look like that.
Yeah.
So for now, you could have the toe win the race.
Yeah. I like, because that's so easy. I can just put those down.
Yeah. So now what I just did there is a very external cue. I didn't tell her how to do it. I just said, get the club to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes that's a lot more, I don't know, relatable. Some people do better with that. Some people need to have the machinations of, well, how do I do that? So just have a bunch of tools in your kit so you can bounce around if they need it. And now when you practice, exaggerate it and see if you can really make it happen.
That felt a little bit better.
It got better,
Yeah.
right? It got better.
I think that first ball, I was like, no.
Yeah,
I was not thinking about the toe. I just was like, just
Yeah.
the ball.
cool.
Yeah.
So Casey, I think we're good. I think you're off the hot seat.
Cool.
There's good job. Good job. It's hard to do, but that's a good example of someone who, wait, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot that I mean, plug that into even a newer player or a player that's been, that doesn't have any sense of what to, like, let's say you get someone who's really pretty new, or it's like almost anywhere you start would be good. I like to just keep things simple with checkpoints. So I just came from Menlo Country Club on last week, and I had a group of ladies that were 90 and 100 shooters, and I don't work with that many 90 and 100 shooters anymore. But it was really fun because they were so fresh and new. I felt like they could take on anything. So I said, let's have 2 checkpoints in the swing. We did, first of all, has anybody been to Menlo Country Club? There's no first cut. There's no rough. It's just green. It's like green from green to green. I mean, it's the tightest lies I've ever seen. So as I was driving in, I said, oh my, we have to completely redo this curriculum because we're going to need some wedges. We're going to need a lot of wedges. So we did mostly wedges, and we did some full swing. But because we did so much good wedge work, I think it really helped the full swing. But anyway, by the time I got to the full swing, we said, let's do driver. So the 2 checkpoints that I have for them was delivery. So I didn't even worry about where they were at the top of the backswing. As long as they weren't doing like the full loop-de-loop or like lots of crazy stuff. I mean, I often will just like to say to some people, I didn't even do this in the golf school because I didn't want to give them too much stuff, but I'll say if you have a flashlight out of the butt end, let's aim the flashlight about a foot outside the target line. Right? So if you can get that lead arm parallel and the butt end at 45 degrees, blue square if you're a skier, don't want any black diamond. Then from here, if you add a little bit more torso rotation, you're there. Right? Add a little speed to it and you're there. So that's a decent checkpoint. My checkpoint for them was a lot more detailed because it was here, delivery. So I said, if you can get this is sort of the magic sauce. If you can get the club behind the hands with the club face at your spine, you're going to be in good shape. If your grip pressure is not too hard, if the club is behind the hands, then the club will want to right itself with centripetal force. So you're not in good shape here. So that's all we worked on. We just worked on that. You can do it in a mirror. And that was one. And the other checkpoint was extension and letting the club go. That was it, those two hip high places. Yes, question?
I could see down the line there, and on your dress rehearsal, you kept getting her to try to get the golf club more closed, but a little inside the hands. Mm-hmm. And that will have a huge effect on how the golf club is delivered, just like you talked about. Mm-hmm. When would you transition from talking about release of the golf club to how it is linked with how the golf club is delivered? And would you go that earlier, or would you carry on how you did and how you left it, and I think she's in a good spot, or would you segue during the lesson to say, this is going to help, one, the path affect the hand so that you can release correctly, that if she keeps coming down steeper, and I couldn't see down the line, but if she keeps delivering like this is almost unattainable or very hard to attain.
So oddly, she wasn't steep, and her release looked like this. However, I really like the question. Thanks for asking. I mean, I like all questions, but thank you for that, because I probably wouldn't have touched on it. So there are so many times where coming into the ball it's a lot, and maybe someone's not picking it up, or maybe it's just not working. So I'll work on exit so that I influence entrance, 100%. And I like to work on hand path a lot. So Casey's not standing here anymore, and Casey didn't really need this as much as some people, but Casey, you can think about this too, because this wouldn't hurt you for sure. So let's say the ball's right here. I will stand right here with my expensive Bubba whips. Does anybody have these things? They're amazing, but they're expensive. So you make a backswing, and then I'd say let's put your hands, don't do a full swing because I'm standing here. Hand path, feel like your hands are going through a channel. I got this one from Mike Bender. I thought it was great. And it works so nicely because it gets the concept of moving from the inside. Now, this is a pretty big exaggeration on hand path, but it gives the idea if someone's coming out that way, this can fix a lot. So I'll do lots of stuff where I put something in the way. I'll put sometimes I even just sit here, I'm like, okay, do some practice swings, and if you just don't hit me, right? So someone's going to be very careful. They're not going to hit a ball, but they're careful, and the concept is pretty clear. I had a guy who was Buslick when I first worked with him, Bryce. Oh my gosh, he was like 11 left. And he had these little weak slices, and he had tons of speed, and he was really wanting to do things well, but he wasn't. And he had so we had the triangles. What are those things? The pyramids. So I just put a pyramid in the way and said, okay, Brad, your job when you practice is stick this pyramid and don't hit the pyramid. So to your point on exit or follow through, right? Instead of even thinking of, like, he knew we had gone through all the stuff on this, but it's still, he needed more work. So at the exit really influenced the coming in. And so that's what he did. And every now and then I hear the pyramid go crashing, but by and large, he got his swing direction to move pretty nicely just by putting something in the way. So, and that would be a really effective strategy, for, again, from a motor learning standpoint, where I'm not doing anything for them, but I put some things in the way for them to avoid. Pool noodles are fantastic. Clay Ballard just came out with this thing called the blue block, which I love. It's this really heavy block, and you can stick alignment rods in different spots based on what you're trying to do. So the thing's got multiple uses. Great for hitting bay if you have a mat and you can't stick a rod in the mat. So that kind of thing is great because it gives people visual feedback, but they don't. But it's not doing it for you. The stuff that you have to. You have to put on or you have to touch, that congruent feedback, that's really good for early, like the Pro Sender, that's really, really good stuff. If you're not getting the feel and you need feel, it kind of exaggerates the feel. But as quickly as you can get off of it, the better. If you can get off of it quickly, the better. In fact, alternate, hit 2 shots with it, 2 shots off, 2 shots with, 2 shots. If you get too much reliance on it, then its efficacy doesn't really come through. Question? Flashlight, yeah. Spoke about the flashlight.
Can't you just say that flashlight is outside of the ball line?
Yeah, I like it a little outside. But generally speaking, I'm working with players that are, 15 handicap, 10 handicap, or if someone tends to get steep, usually not super flexible, so they're rotating through and the hands are coming this way too. So it's a general checkpoint. I think outside could be maybe an exaggeration sometime. Better, certainly they're better players that's the last thing you'd want to give them. So it just depends, but yeah, thanks. Question?
Thank you so much for being here, and you've done a great job, and that's a really, really interesting student because we deal with this all the time. With your background, all the sports you've played, like you kind of mentioned at the very beginning, I connect with that too because I played some soccer, and so with her, I'm just curious if you were to thought like, hey, how would you curve a soccer ball?
Yeah.
Like, what would you do with your foot? And then connecting it that way with maybe some previous sports, maybe they've played before, or they're currently playing. I don't know what level she played. Maybe she played like high-end club or played college or whatever.
Oh, that's great.
But maybe because she hasn't played very much golf, she's like, oh, never
Yeah,
thought of
that's
it.
great stuff.
So I don't know if you teach like that or have in the past.
Definitely. We call them motor pattern biases too. So I can sometimes tell if someone's played field hockey because their lead leg tends to go down. You can tell sometimes tennis players, they don't have as much rotation. Hockey players, for sure, they don't have a ton of hip rotation, but they're really good at covering the ball. But yeah, so those biases, I want to know. Somebody who's a good hitter in baseball, we usually have some work to do on the release, but someone who's a pitcher usually has a great kinematic sequence. I love getting pitchers more than I like getting hitters. But for the most part, I'm going to take something that they've already done, and I'm going to honor that. I'm definitely honoring that. If the bat was here and the club is supposed to be here, we're going to take a nice hard look. But in terms of imagery, like someone understands how to hit topspin with tennis, like sure, yeah, let's bring that in, or like a little volley, a little more like a chip.
Yeah, question on that. I'm very biased in your baseball one, having been a baseball player my whole life before taking up golf
What
in my
position?
early 20s. Well, I pitched and I hit. So my initial thought playing golf was always, oh, I'm going to kill this game. The ball's not moving, and you think of it as a hit, and it's disastrous because it does what her ball does. But if you think about golf in terms of the throw and a toss and a release, then all of a sudden the whole thing changes.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, just in that regard, is Casey, if you're answering the question because you have to, unless you don't have to, was your intention when you're doing that, are you trying to hit the ball, or are you trying to swing through the ball to the other end of your swing as your intention, which describes what you were trying to do?
I feel like I'm trying to hit the ball, I'm not
Great question.
She said
Great,
hit,
right?
not through.
Right? Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like this little check swing where she's keeping it open. Yeah. Did everybody get his point? Picking up what he's putting down? For sure. And that's a great concept. Like the image of just swinging through it could, especially if you're relaxing the hands and you're thinking, I'm just going to whoosh. Yeah. Good. I see.
Last question.
Hey, it just seems like you're pretty confident in teaching many different types of people and kind of everything. And we talked about short game and how there's tension in that area. But how would you, with different types of players, but there may be something you strongly believe in, how do you go about, or can you speak to, like, whether when you need to change something you really believe in, or if there's a certain thing that you do, like, how do you go about that with different types of people?
I'm pretty open. Man, I wish I could show you this woman's swing that I teach. You'd look at it and you'd be like, she takes 4 hours of lessons from you a week? I'm pretty open. I'm not open about contact. You kind of have to make good contact. And I don't really argue with physics. So if somebody wants the ball to do something, then the club has to do something to make that happen. So that's pretty black and white. This is math. I love math. But how they do it, I'm really open to that. Unless I think it might create injury, or it might create issues if they want to then ramp it up and they want to go farther. But we talk about all this stuff. Like if somebody wants to hit the ball farther, we're going to have some conversations about how they're working their angular momentum, right? So this lady was 75 and she started taking lessons from a woman in Colorado where she is, and the woman, I think, gave her great advice. She said, play it as it lies, just learn how to hit everything. Nancy hated the driving range, hated learning technique, I think I spent 1 hour, I probably spent 50 hours with her, 1 hour has been on the range. Her swing is the worst swing I've ever seen in my life in all areas. I mean, it looks something like this. She does this weird thing, and then she goes like this, and then she goes like this. And then she's like, what the fuck? She's got this little hat. God, I wish I could show it to you. I try to get a little video. But guess what? She's winning long drive, and she now has 2 sets of clubs, and they bought a house in Florida. I mean, so it works. For her, it worked. Her swing is the worst I've ever seen. It has so many problems. We kind of hit a wall with the short game because you can't get the club down to the ground when your exit looks like this. And I mean, I have a hard hat that I wear with her because she's so tough on me. But yeah, anyway, I'm open. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Heidi and Casey, thank you very much. We've got one more presentation. We're all going to head back down to the ballroom. Thank you for being here.